Here we go, and you should see my slides here. I'm going to make it a slideshow. So how to build a bot that doesn't suck. Lessons learned from building more than 50 bots on 5 continents. Hello, I'm Ivan. I'm the co-founder of Campfire AI. And I'm going to start the talk with a little story that happened to me 4 years ago. And it goes a bit in line with what Rick was saying before. So one day, about 4 years ago, I was actually looking for a job. I was interviewing, and I was at a certain company interviewing, and we were about 3 or 4 rounds of interviews in. And the lady interviewing me looks at me and she says, you know, Ivan, based on everything we've discussed, based on, you know, what you like, what you don't like, I really think you would be ideal to join the chatbot team. And so this was 4 years ago, and I looked at her and I thought about it, and I basically immediately knew that's definitely something I don't want to be doing. Why did I not want to be doing it? Because up until that moment, every experience that I'd had with chatbots in my normal life was pretty negative, was pretty much not a great experience. And so I didn't really see how it could work. And also the way I'm wired personally is more for quality, more for making things that work. I like to add value. I like to, you know, make things easier and not more difficult. And these are the kind of things that I was always seeing. So every time I tried to use a chatbot, it was this kind of conversation where I say something, I'm not understood. The bot doesn't really get what I'm saying. I don't feel like it's helping me. I don't feel like this is going to solve my problem. And so I very politely declined that offer. And here I am 4 years later. I'm running a chatbot company. We are 8 people today. And so this is what we do. We are in between business and technology. So whenever a company like the ones on top wants to implement one of the technologies like the ones on the bottom, then we come in and we help them leverage those technologies to make sure they can get the most out of those platforms. And so the question really is what happened between those 4 years. So I did end up joining that company, not in the chatbot team at first, but I did end up joining it. And I was always looking at the chatbot team and I was seeing what they were doing. And I realized a few things. So I realized, firstly, and this is something I think everyone in here instinctively realizes as well, it's the potential that conversational AI has for the future, but also already today, and also even 4 years ago. Instinctively, if you think about, if you have an issue, you're in your house, your Wi-Fi doesn't work, or you have some kind of problem with some provider of yours, and you want it to be solved, what's the easiest way for that to be solved is for you to just express your problem. And the easiest way for humans to express themselves is by talking about it, either written or just verbally, and to then get a solution offered to you. And so I think we all understand that. So I did see the potential. Secondly, I realized that it doesn't all have to be bad. Even 4 years ago, good chatbots did exist. They were just very, very rare. They are much less rare today, but it's still, you know, that's still shifting. But we can build good bots, and that's really what my talk today is going to be about. And the third one is the maturity of the technology, or of the niche as a whole, of the conversational AI niche. And this is really what Rick was talking about as well, with the technology maturing. So thankfully, our friends at ChatLayer, at Sinch, they work very hard on the AI, they work very hard on the NLP. And so they make it better and better and better, and easier to use and easier to make very good chatbots. And so if we look at the hype cycle, again, Rick was already showing this, but so in 2019, chatbots was at peak hype, very high expectations, but actually it was inflated expectation. It wasn't really there yet, but it went very fast, because if we look at 2022 and we look for chatbots on this graph, we can actually see that it's no longer there. We've actually already reached the plateau of productivity, which means you've been promoted out of the hype cycle. It's no longer a hype, and now we can really start producing really good bots. And that's really what my talk is about today, because besides the technology maturing, what has also matured a lot is the implementation side and how to implement a chatbot project. And really, implementing a chatbot project is very different from implementing typically other IT projects, let's say. And that's, well, so these are my 4 lessons learned are today for building bots that don't suck. And the first lesson is anticipating the out of scope. And so that's what I was talking about with the difference between an IT project and an AI project. So a chatbot is really fundamentally an AI project, but they're often being treated like an IT project. And what's the difference? So let's start with an example. Let's say we have an IT project that we want to implement. So let's say we're building a website. And so what you do then is you look at, okay, what do we want to put on the website? What are all the user journeys that we want people to go through? And then how do we structure that on the website? Which buttons are we going to put there? And when they click on the first button, what happens after that? And then basically someone builds the website, it gets tested, and usually a lot of things work, and maybe one button doesn't really work, then that gets fixed, then it's tested again. And once everything works, it gets put live. And so it's really very yes or no. Does it work? Does it not work? It's very black and white. It's very linear. It's more structured. Whereas an AI project, if you compare it, so a chatbot, it's really a text field. And so whereas in an IT project, like a website, you provide a user interface that then the user has to subject itself to, or like start using and understanding. With a text field, a user is in charge. A user can say whatever they want, and you just have to make sure that what they say is captured, and then what comes out of the AI should be at least a neutral experience and hopefully a positive experience. And so the roles are really flipped, which is at the same time really why chatbots are so useful, because you don't have to start understanding the website. You can just type your problem. Like we said, there's very little friction. You can just type your problem into the text field, and then the bot should be able to handle it and give you a solution. And so that's the promise of the chatbot, but at the same time, it's a challenge because it does provide a little bit of different way of working to make everything work correctly. And so a good way to visualize this is with the scope of all the possible questions a user can ask. So I have this at the top in the purple bar. Let's say we're building a chatbot for a bank, and the purple bar is every single question someone can ask to a bank. So I lost my DigiPass, I lost my card, I want a new loan, where is the location of my nearest bank, and so on and so on and so on. And really, this is a very, very long list. It could be thousands of questions. But when we build a bot, obviously we want to start with a smaller scope, and we're going to start with a pilot. And so we decide on the scope we want to build. And those are typically 20 to 30 intents that we're going to put into the bot. Those questions are going to be understood. And then we're going to be providing an answer to that question. And so I do see this in chatbots all over, that this works very well. These are the happy flows. These are all the journeys that work very well. But then all the questions that are not in the scope, those are typically a problem, because whenever someone doesn't ask a question that falls into your scope, when your bot is very well built, it could really be that you have a false positive. So it's going to match with something within your scope. And so what we have to do is actually already anticipate everything someone can say out of your scope, and already at least capture that and do something with it. And don't say, oh, I don't understand, I'm very sorry, could you please rephrase your question? Especially because rephrasing your question is not going to help in that case. If it's out of scope, you can rephrase it 1,000 times. The answer is simply not inside of the bot. And so that's really what I see a lot of times. Here's an example. It's a false positive. So someone asks, where can I find my account transcripts? And it matches with 78% with account login. And then the bot's going to reply, you can reset your password by clicking on the forgot password button. So that's a very good example of a false positive. In this case, the NLP threshold, so the percentage from when we're going to give the answer, is probably set at 75, for example, which is typical, 75 to 80. But this happens very often when you only focus on the in-scope NLP or the in-scope intents that you get into the bot. Whenever someone says something out of scope, especially if you have a lot of expressions within the intents of your in-scope questions, then the more expressions you have, the better the match can be, and the more likely you will have a false positive. So I'll show you later how we deal with that. And the second example of the out of scope is a true negative. So it's basically a not understood. It's something that was out of scope and that is not understood, but correctly not understood. So the bot didn't know the answer. But like we said before, the bot asks us to rephrase. And when we rephrase, it's still not going to understand it. And so both of those are examples of the out of scope. What can we do about that? So for the first one, it's creating what we call 99 intents. So 99 intents is all the questions that are out of scope. We're going to put them into buckets or categories. So let's say there's all the questions about loans. Those are not inside of the bot, so they're out of scope. We're going to put them all together into a 99 intent, at least capture them, even though we don't have a flow behind it. We don't have an answer or some kind of anything that goes within the bot at this stage, but we're already going to create the intent, a very broad one that really captures the whole category, to make sure that as soon as someone talks about a loan, it's going to go into a different flow. And what flow happens behind that, I'm going to talk about that later. And the second one is handling true negatives correctly. So handling the not understood, because you can't say, please rephrase when there's nothing to be answered. There's nothing to see. So that's not a good approach. And so this will be handled in lesson 4. So that was my first lesson. The second one is to build an intent hierarchy. So getting your user to the most specific answer as quickly as possible. And so this is an example of a correct flow. I lost my card. Which card did you lose, debit or credit? The person says credit. Did you already call CardStop to report it, yes or no? So this is what I call the happy flow. And usually when you deal with an IT project, you focus on the happy flow, and then that's basically where it stops. But what happens very often is this. It's where you say, I lost my credit card. And then they ask, which card did you lose, debit or credit? And then it's like, I just told you I lost my credit card. And then we go into the right flow. And then even worse is when you go even more detailed. I lost my Amex Gold. Which card did you lose, debit or credit? And we repeat, it's my Amex Gold. And then it doesn't even understand that Amex Gold is a credit card. So which card did you lose? Once again, debit or credit. And then we have to say Amex is a credit card for the bot to understand. And it's almost like the more detail we give, the less the experience is. And it should really be the other way around. The more detail you give, the better the experience should be. And that's what I often see going wrong, and that's what we should solve. And so if you look at the knowledge hierarchy, which is everything, all the knowledge that is living inside of the bot. So here we have an example. It goes from broad to specific. So at the very top, we have the most broad knowledge form. So I lost something. And the more we go down, the more we go into details. So I lost my card, or I lost my login, or I lost my PIN. Meaning if someone says, I lost something, we need to ask, okay, did you lose your card, your login, or your PIN? And then if they say card, we need to ask, is it debit card or credit card? But when someone says, I lost my Amex Gold, then we should go all the way to the bottom to Amex Gold. And we shouldn't be asking the information that the bot already has. And so this is really why a chatbot can be very good, because if you get to ask the question as detailed as you want and then get the very specific reply that really applies to you, then that's really a very, very positive experience. But this happens very rarely. And so very often, the flows are not developed really to the point where they could be. And so all these details that we could capture are not captured. And then it looks like the bot doesn't really have a memory or doesn't really have a very granular approach to solving problems. And so this is also, if you would put the same knowledge hierarchy onto a website, you would have to click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times before you go into, I lost my Amex Gold. And so if you were able to just say, I lost my Amex Gold, and then the bot understands to the question up until this level of specificity, then you immediately get the reply that you're looking for. You don't have to go understanding the knowledge hierarchy of this company. You don't need to. You can just express the problem for your side. You don't have to understand their structure of their information. And so how do we do that? How do we understand the question in so much detail? So the first step is to group all the similar intents and expressions. So if it's about losing a card, you say lost card, lost debit card, lost credit card. I can't find my Amex. Even my dog ate my Visa. My card was stolen. You put all of those that really belong together, you put them together. The second step is you organize them from broad to specific. So it's really creating that knowledge hierarchy that we had in the previous slide. And so you go from losing your card to losing your credit card to losing your Amex to losing your Amex Gold. So it's really, every time it's a different level of detail. And then there's actually multiple ways to do this, but the best way is to then merge these into one intent, and then you use entities for specific recognition. So the entity would be card, another entity would be credit card, Amex and Amex Gold would be different entities. And so as soon as that intent is recognized, you go looking for entities. Which entity exists? If Amex Gold exists, okay, you go straight there. If Amex exists, you go straight there. So it's a reverse, you know, if you have to put this rule first, the deepest level of detail, you put that rule first. And if not, you check this one. If not, you check this one. If not, you check this one. And that's how you do it. So with all the entities, you make one for item, make one for card, make one for credit card, make one for Amex. And then you basically need an answer for every one of those questions. So I lost my card. We've already seen it. It's a credit card or a debit card. For the Amex, maybe it's a different answer. And for Amex Gold, it's a different answer once again. That was my second lesson. The third lesson is to expect unusual expressions. And this is really, you know, when you are finding all the questions that someone can ask, and you are finding all the ways that someone can ask that question, you can try as hard as you want. And trust me, we have. Once you put the bot live, someone is going to come along and say something that you never would have thought of. So, and it's really, it's the craziest things. Like even for, I lost my credit card, you can think of all the ways someone could express that. You put the bot live, and within 10 minutes of it going live, someone's going to come along and say, I was unloading my supermarket groceries and my card fell out of my pocket and now I cannot find it, or something like that. And so the bot might not understand that if you just test it a little bit or try it yourself and then put it live. And so I have an example with this one. For example, again, it's with the bank theme. So how would you ask for this? I understand we have a chat. So this is a question for the chat. So if anyone could type what they typically call this little box. So it's the box that we use to make bank transfers. There's a lot of words to use for this. There's the typical words. It's a card reader. It's a bank transfer box. It could be, some banks call it a digipass. I live in Belgium. A lot of people call it a kaske, which is a very Flemish way of saying it, even a bakske. And so these are all the different ways. And some people even say something like, the little thing I use to make my bank transfers, or the thing with the numbers on it, and so on and so on and so on. And so here are all the examples. Digipass, kaske, bakje, card reader, bakske, digipass, the thing that I pay online with, digipass, card reader, and so on and so on. And so you can try as much as you want, and this is only for the word digipass itself. But besides the word itself, it's also how the sentence is structured, how someone frames that, what happened to them. So like I said before, with the example with the groceries, someone could really say that, and trust me, it happens very often that someone says it in a unusual way like that, and we need to anticipate that. So a typical IT project, again with the example of the website, you build it, then you test it, and if something doesn't work, you fix it, and then either it works or it doesn't. Your button either works or it doesn't work, and then you fix it, and then you can deploy it. But for a bot, it's very different, because you can build and test as much as you want. Once you deploy it, people are going to come in and say different things. And so you need to have really a lot of iterations of testing. And so you can test internally. The best thing is to then also do a round of testing with your client, because your client knows how their users or how their customers express themselves. And usually the contact center agents are very much the best knowledgeable people for that. So they really know how people say certain things. And so what we do is we build, we test, we build, we test, we build, we test. And this is us internally together with the client doing the testing. And every time we test, that's another thing, is for us as implementation company, the NLP of the bot is really like a black box, meaning if you change a little thing here, it can affect all the other intents that are existing within your NLP model. So you can't just test that one little thing and then test only that little thing. You need to retest the whole bot as a whole every time you make changes. So you build your test, you build your test, you build your test. At some point, we're happy for the bot to go live. We put it live, and then we monitor it very, very closely, because as soon as someone is going to be talking to the bot, we're really looking at it. It's like your little baby that you've taught a lot of things. You put it live and you keep teaching it. You keep teaching it, and you make it smarter and smarter. So you've deployed it, you keep building, you keep testing, you keep building, and so on and so on. And every time you have new releases that you put out with new knowledge that the bot has learned. And so how do you do that? Yeah, that's actually what I already said. So testing internally, testing with the client, and then testing with real user expressions. So seeing what comes in. Every time the bot has a false positive, you need to correct that. Every time the bot has a not understood, you need to see what happened there. And then you can continue until you reach about a 90% recognition rate of your in-scope questions. And so really the difference between this first layer and the second layer, with this we can achieve like a 70% recognition rate of in-scope questions. And with this approach, we really reach a 90% recognition rate of all the in-scope questions. Do we want to go higher? Honestly, I don't think we really want to go higher. I think also, well, maybe we want to go to 95 maybe, but we don't want to really go to 100 because it's simply, some people, I mean, if you as a human don't understand the question, then for sure the bot is not going to understand it. And so it's very typical for 5% of questions, even for agents, not to be correctly understood. It's, I mean, some people don't know the correct jargon of expressing a certain problem when it's very specific. And so, but we can already reach a 90% of in-scope recognition rate. Maybe in the future we can go to 95. The more the technology gets better, the more the implementation gets better. But 90% is honestly already very, very good. It's very, very high. And with the other 10%, we do still have a lot of ways to make that experience not negative, to make it at least a neutral and maybe even a positive experience. And that's my final lesson. It's the removing of the sorry, I don't know. So the sorry, I don't know that question, I think everybody knows this. This situation. So you're talking to a bot, you're saying something, the bot's apologizing to you, doesn't understand you, and it's just saying, I don't know. Maybe it's saying, please rephrase. And that really makes the whole situation more complicated, because the reason you contacted this company is because you have a question. You have a question, you want to either know something or you want something to be solved. So you have a problem. And when the bot is coming to you and saying, sorry, I don't know, or I don't understand you, and so on, now you have two problems. So at first you have one problem. Let's say my Wi-Fi isn't working. I type it into the bot doesn't understand me. Now I have two problems. My Wi-Fi still isn't working, and now the bot doesn't understand me. So I have to figure out how to reach them, how to get them on the phone, how to get a real answer from this company. And so again, this goes into the graph where we have the in scope and the out of scope. If the question is really out of scope, then we need a better way of dealing that, because we still cannot create a negative experience. We shouldn't be creating negative experiences, even if the question that was asked was not in our scope. And so we have a lot of ways of doing that. This is really the not understood flow in the most complete form. So we don't always use everything that is in here, but we've used everything that's in here at least once. And so the first thing is it a troll, yes or no? Some companies deal with a lot of trolling. So if it's a troll, then we go to a troll flow. Then is it gibberish, yes or no? Because if it's gibberish, so gibberish means it's just a lot of letters one after the other. So it's not really understandable at all. We have a way to test for that. And if it is, then we're going to try to talk to a human immediately, because yeah, the AI is not gonna be able to deal with that at all. If it's not gibberish, then we go to the entity fallback. So that means, is an entity recognized? So if someone says, I have a problem with my Wi-Fi, and we didn't recognize that question, but the entity Wi-Fi is recognized, then we go into the fallback response. Oh, I see you have a question about your Wi-Fi. Is it one of the following options? Is it that your Wi-Fi doesn't work? Is it that you want to order a new Wi-Fi? And so on and so on. If no entity is recognized, we go to the knowledge search. So this also we can do that with Sinch, with chat layer. They have Ask Frank, which will bundle all the content that you put into it, and it's going to use AI to then look into that all those documentation and look if there is information relevant to the question, and then it's going to push one or multiple articles that the person can just click on and then go to that info. If the knowledge search doesn't provide a good result, so it's not something that we find in that content, then we go to talk human. And here again, we can say like, look, I see you have a question and I know the ideal person that can answer that question for you. I'm going to put you in touch immediately. And at least that brings you a step forward. So that's a positive experience still. And then you begin the offload. If not, we ask, is there another question? Yes, we go to a new question flow. No, we wrap it up. I mean, usually we don't really reach this. It's either talk to a human or it's already handled before. So this is really not a lot of conversations go that far. So those are all the safety nets that we really use when we have not understood, so that we at least go forward into the conversation. So use the information you do have, find an alternative solution, and don't apologize. You shouldn't be sorry for what they don't know. It's also not nice if I ask a question to be apologized to. It's like, just bring me forward and give me something, give me a next step, give me something that I can do. So if you apply these 4 lessons, you'll always create a bot that solves questions within its scope, leaves the user feeling heard and understood, always bring the user closer to a solution rather than further from one, and fully leverages the power of AI by using all the available information. That was it for me. I understand that there's also time for some questions.
Wow, thanks, Ivan. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing all these learnings and best tips on how to build a great bot. I think it will be very useful for all the audience. Thanks. Yeah, we have time for some questions. So please, if you can ask your questions in the chat, I will be more than glad to read them. Actually, there's one in Dutch, so maybe that one I'm not able to read it.
It's an example, Clara. It's he's saying, where did the box of the Digipass reader go? So it's an example of how to express that question.
Correct. Okay. By the way, when you ask about the little machine for the bank, several people answer that the identifier e-reader, like to the card, like that in French. I love that someone also added random reader. Yes, it's the random reader for the bank. Yeah, for the bank process. But let's see. Are you sure you don't have any questions for Ivan? Any final thoughts then, Ivan, for the audience and the people that
I'm actually, yeah, I'm very happy that so many people joined, and I think as a community I'm so happy about all the positivity that's around it, and I think we all understand what we can do with this, and we can make people's lives a lot better and easier, and you know, everybody's already been frustrated being on the phone waiting or asking or trying to find a solution to a question. And it really comes from both sides, because we've done a lot of projects already for a lot of clients, and it's not only from the user side, but it's also from the agent side. These very repetitive questions that often have a simple answer, the agents are very happy that those are automated and they don't need to day after day answer 10 times the same question. A very good example is for the bank card for a bank, it's like, what's the BIC code of your bank? And so the agents that work on the contact center, they have to be replying to that question day after day. And so it's the same question. The answer is very simple. Okay, they use templates, but still they have to be clicking around, waiting for a reply, and so on and so on. So it's really a positive thing we're doing. And I'm very excited that there's such a good momentum going on and a lot of positivity around it.
I agree. I completely agree with you. Here, Barton, thanks. Very useful information. Also, Edwin Ram says, thanks, Ivan, for your presentation. And we have one question that maybe we can answer that. Baron Jungarius says, have you tried knowledge graphs instead of traditional NLU?
We've always used NLU or NLP, and so for us that's the best way of doing it. We're very focused on what we do and creating better ways of working. We do test other things to see where, you know, what solutions are out there, but we also like to keep control of what's happening as a reply and as a flow behind the answer that we give. And so we keep testing and looking for other solutions, including knowledge graphs. But for now, we haven't made a switch or haven't included that in the way of working. We haven't seen the benefit yet.
Okay, cool. Ivan, thanks a lot. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's been very insightful. Thanks for your time as well. If you still have questions for Ivan, you can write them in the chat and he will be able to answer them in the chat as well later on. But thanks again and see you soon, Ivan.
My pleasure. Thanks, Claudia.
Bye. Guys, now we're gonna have a 10-minute break. Get yourself a coffee, a cup of tea, so we will see you back at 11:15 for our third session of the day with Joachim Jonkers, the head of product at ChatLayer by Sinch. See you in a bit.